All right. How's the audio? How's the video? It's 11:59. The live streaming event begins at noon. You are live. The internet can totally see you now. One person watching. All right. Hello and welcome to another live streaming event by Rick Miracle. It's 11:59 and now it's noontime. So when I do these events, I usually wind up pondering for hours or the day before. What am I going to talk about? Because there's so much to talk about. And I like to play with the software, see if I can improve on my abilities to get some things done. It is a learning curve to it. So what I would like to talk about today is mind control. How do we get mind controlled? How do we know what we think we know? How do we change what we think? You might think one thing when you're 20, and another when you're 30, and another one when you're 40, and 50, and 60. It's because of information input. Visually, audio, motions, and apparently the powers that be are quite proficient and have been working quite hard on learning how to program we the people. And with the sophisticated technologies they have today, I think they're getting better at it. There's an old saying when I worked at a major aerospace company for 10 years in electronics. And the saying was, garbage in, garbage out. So when you put garbage into the computer or system, you're going to get garbage out. You put good information in, you're going to get good information out. Just something to think about when we think about what we know. With that said, I was reading this book again. So I'm going to read a paragraph or two from it. Ron Hubbard Dianetics. I read this years ago. And it's just interesting to be reviewing and reading it again. If it has the impact on me now that it did 20 years ago, that'll be something. It tells you how to go into regression and improve your mental intelligence and abilities, because apparently as we go through life, things happen to us that put little plugs or alternate negative thoughts in our processing system. Apparently the human brain and body is more amazing than any computer they will ever make. And everything that goes in is recorded, and as you move through each day and experience each moment from morning, noon to night, your computerized brain accesses all of your memory to make everything rational. And if you get garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. your thinking's going to be irrational. And with all the crazy propaganda in the news, I can see how people would be befuddled and have a foggy mindset and actually try to escape social responsibility and decision making. They'll try to hide, which they do. You can't even talk to people about issues. And when they are programmed to be a Democrat, whatever, socialist, liberal, they're fixed. And they'll get vicious to defend it. Conversely, of course, if you're a Republican and you're conservative or Christian or something, it's fixed. And you'll get vicious to defend it. And apparently they have the world divided almost 50-50, which I think is part of the intention. Divide and conquer. Everybody knows that. And the Hegelian dialectic. So they make all kinds of divisions between men and women, black and white people, Americans and foreigners, and rich and poor, and gays and straights. So is it all intentional? I think it is. But let me read a little bit from this book and see if we can have an intelligent conversation, thought process, discussion. Every precept, sight, sound, smell, feeling, taste, organic sensation, pain, rhythm, weight, muscular motion, emotion is properly and neatly filed in the standard banks in full. Dianetics. It does not matter how many aberrations a physical intact person has, or whether he thinks he can or cannot contain this data or recall it. The file is there and it is complete. So even if you don't think you can remember things, or you feel like you don't have that great of an intelligence or abilities, I know a lot of people who say they can't do this and can't do that. The knowledge is in their data bank. Everything from grade school, child, growing up, high school, college, life experiences, broken romances, problems with parents, economic problems. It's all programmed in our heads. And we react to that programming. So nobody's programming is the same as the next person. This file begins at an early period, of which more later. It then runs consecutively, whether the individual is awake or asleep, except in moments of unconsciousness, for an entire lifetime. It apparently has an infinite capacity. The numbers of these concepts, something that has been perceived, would stagger an astronomer's computer. The existence and profusion of memories retained were discovered and studied in a large number of cases, and they can be examined in anyone by certain processes. Everything in this bank is correct insofar as the single action of perception is concerned. There may be organic problems, like somebody could be blind or they couldn't hear. But these things are not errors in the standard memory bank. They are simply absence of data. So if you're not blind, or if you're not deaf or something like that, like the computer, the standard memory banks are perfect, recording faithfully and reliably. So nobody can escape this. Whatever news you're watching, TV show, Brokeback Mountain, for example, promoting a certain reality, change in social thinking, and Modern Family, the TV program, or Charlie with 2.5 Men. And he usually was sleeping with a different girl almost every show, etc. Seinfeld. So this is all programming. Garbage in, garbage out. Now when I grew up, you had Western movies, The Lone Ranger, and of course cartoons, Bugs Bunny and all that. it was all the information put into a generation of people. So my point is, today, the information put into this generation is a lot different. Now, part of the standard banks is audio-somatic, which is to say the recordings of words heard. And part of the banks is visual-somatic, which is to say the recordings of words read. There are special parts of the sound and sight files. A blind man who has read to read with his fingers develops a tactile somatic file. So whatever goes into the system is recorded permanently. And apparently our ability to remember and our brain's ability to analyze and process, to make decisions, is ongoing and it's infinite. The content of the speech files is exactly as heard without alteration. Another interesting part of the standard memory banks is that they apparently run the original and hand forward exact copies to the analyzer. So no matter how the information is put in, that's how you're going to analyze it. So if somebody grew up to be Islamic or Muslim and Arab, and they were having their teachings from their social environment, that's how they analyze reality. Same thing with a Christian. That's how they analyze reality. Same thing with somebody who's Jewish, what they were taught. That's how they analyze reality. And, of course, with the change in the social reality we live in now, where people are into the New Age or more open to pansexualism, transgenderism, that's how they analyze things. And the people who control our reality know this. That's one of the important things I want to try to get across. They know what to plug in and how the people will respond over a certain period of time. They will hand out as many exact copies as are demanded without diminishing the actual file original. And I remember years ago I was standing in line in a deli to get something to eat, and I heard somebody making a statement to somebody else, and I had heard that or watched it on the news the evening before. And when I watched it on the news, I knew it was a bogus deception. But this person was parroting it, telling somebody else this information as if it was absolutely true. And I spoke to my friend standing near me, and I was so upset. I said, they actually believe that. Just like 911, everybody believed what the government told us, that they found a passport on the ground from an Arab, immediately determined it was Osama bin Laden, and they had to attack all the countries in the Middle East. We all bought that hook, line, and sinker. Now a lot of people know better. But again, it's the garbage in, garbage out. As they hand out these copies, each in kind with color, motion, sight, tone, audio, etc. The amount of material which is retained in the average standard memory banks would fill several libraries. That's each person. But the method of retention is invariable, and the potential of recall is perfect. So that's why if they hypnotize somebody or regress somebody, they can take them back to when they were younger. The primary source of error in rational computation comes under the headlines of insufficient data and erroneous data. The individual, daily facing new situations, is not always in possession of all the material he requires to make a decision. And he may have been told something on good authority which was not true, and yet which did not find counter evidence in the banks. So I know a lot of these lecturers and books and speakers and TV programming, that you can pay attention and they'll say things that are commonly known, so that the receiver, the human being, is probably nodding its head going, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And then they'll slip in something else, and the person's already in an approving, receiving mode, and they can plug in erroneous or incorrect, false information. And if you don't pay attention, you can't catch it. Between the standard banks, which are perfect and reliable in the computer, the analytical mind, which is perfect and reliable, there is no irrational concourse. The answer is always as right as it can be made to be in the light of the data at hand. And that is all anyone can ask of a computing device or recording device. The analytical mind goes even further in its efforts to be right that one would suppose. It constantly checks and weighs new experience in the light of old experiences, forms new conclusions in the light of old conclusions, changes old conclusions, and generally is very busy being right. So I just thought it was interesting that we would all understand that what goes in, what we do agree with, what we align ourselves with, being a Democrat or being a Republican, and following those philosophies and being with other people and agreeing on things, that human being has an analytical mind which is processing all that information so that the output will be in line with that perceived information. So a lot of people are into the New Age. Everybody knows that. And you get books like the Message of the Crystal Skull, From Atlantis to the New Age. Crystal Enlightenment. The Secret, another metaphysic book. Wheels of Light, the chakra system. My only point is, people get into these things and they're programming themselves to be stronger in those particular beliefs. Again, the New Age, transgenderism, pansexualism, acceptance of gay marriage, which in 2008, 2009, when I was driving from Florida to Maine or New York, late night radio, it was 30% for gay marriage, 65% opposed. And I clearly remember the radio host saying at 2 o'clock in the morning, well, it'll never pass. It'll never be accepted. The majority of the people are opposed to it. And then the next year it was 35 for and 60 against, and then 44 and 55 against, and then 54 and 50 against. And the whole thing has shifted from this many people not supporting gay marriage to this many people. And this many people supporting it grew, doubled. And it was through intentional propaganda, information fed to the public with the newspaper articles, magazine articles, movies, Brokeback Mountain, Modern Family, and so much more. They're re-educating we the people. So then you have other books that a lot of people are so educated and trained. Have you ever heard this before? Don't think negative thoughts. Don't talk to those conspiracy theorists. And so some people are just so programmed, they won't look at where this stuff is coming from. And they certainly won't look and go buy books like this and read it. You're programmed. Family of Secrets. The Bush Dynasty, America's Invisible Government, and the Hidden History of the Last 50 Years. Russ Baker. Big, thick book. So if you were to go buy this and read it, you would be putting stuff into the memory bank, which is infinite. And you got more books you could get. Skull and Bones, The Ivy League, The Hidden Power, The Hidden Paths of Power, Anthony Robbins. Secrets of the Tomb. Alex Robbins, a bold new voice and a superb reporter with an eye for the good story. He has turned her attention to another fascinating tale. The secret societies of Yale have walls of confidentiality as hard to breach as those of the CIA. And again, there's so much material out there. Project Paperclip, I keep talking about it. It says it in the middle of this book. Nazi scientists, United States government, secret agenda. Linda Hunt, Nazi symbol. Remember, information goes in, information comes out. American soldiers fighting in World War II had barely laid down their guns when hundreds of German and Austrian scientists, including a number implicated in Nazi war crimes, began immigrating to the United States. Let me say it again. Hundreds of German and Austrian scientists, including a number implicated in Nazi war crimes, began immigrating to the United States. They were brought here under a secret intelligence project codenamed Paperclip. Ever since, the U.S. government has successfully promoted the lie that Paperclip was a short-term operation limited to a few post-war raids on Hitler's horde of scientific talent. The General Accounting Office even claims that the project ended in 1947, all of which is sheer propaganda. So what were the Germans into back then? And they were performing horrific experiments on prisoners, mind control, and into the occult. And these people were the leading members of the NASA and the United States space program and advanced military weapons programs. They got all these guys and they continued the programs going on in Germany, Austria. Again, another book. Secret America, the hidden symbols and codes to the mysteries of the United States. Even the symbol there in the middle of this screen with the bird, there's 13 stripes on the shield, 13 feathers, 13 leaves, 13 stars above, the Magen David, the star symbol for the Israeli flag, and the King Solomon's temple, the ring King Solomon wore, that he could use to communicate with demons. That's where he got his power. So there's so much in the symbols. So another book you can read, The Washington Monument, The Pyramid and the $1 Bill, The Skull and Bones Secret at Yale, Sign-Filled National Treasures in Museums from Coast to Coast, Ancient Mysteries of Our Familiar Cities, Landmarks, Hotbeds of Current Masonic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian Activity. I keep saying these things in similar sentences, and I get comments from Masonic Freemasons. Oh, you can't combine them with the Kabbalah. You can't combine them with the Satanists. You can't combine them with the Rosicrucians or all the other organizations. But you get these books by well-known authors and who are smarter than me, and they combine it. Covert Clubs, Societies, Association of the Ultra-Rich and Powerful. Another book, A Higher Form of Killing, The Secret Story of Chemical and Biological Warfare. Robert Harris and Jeremy Paxion. A Higher Form of Killing deserves widest possible distribution, for I am convinced it can add immeasurable to the growing weight of political opinion determined to put an end through nonviolence to the incredible threat of complex violence under which we are forced to live. A Higher Form of Killing. And remember, they're bringing online the 5G electromagnetic network, being able to permeate, radiate high-level radio frequencies, microwaves, anywhere at anyone, and probably done by artificial intelligence, computer systems making the decisions that are programmed into those systems. They won't be human decisions. It'll be based on metadata that they program into the computer, and cataloging people by what they might purchase, what they might say, what they might do, who they might know, books they might buy, churches they might belong to. This whole system is being set in place, and it's all going to be programmed, automatic, by the controllers. Virtual government, CIA mind control operations in America. Mind control exists in a scientific netherworld with origins in the hearts of some of Nazi Germany's most ruthless military scientists. Project Paperclip. Another famous author. The late, great USA, the coming merger with Mexico and Canada. They have plans, the way I understand it, for the world to be divided into 10 areas. For example, Canada, the United States, and Mexico would be one area. South America would be another area. Africa would be another area. China would be another area. India, whatever, would be 10 areas. And apparently the philosophy would be a feudal system where these 10 areas had to compete against each other for work production, food, and everything else. So there would probably be perpetual battles and wars, like the Hunger Games movie. You can buy these books. And it is the money supply. There's books out there by Anthony Sutton, a famous author. Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler. Hitler was financed by the Illuminati Rothschilds, involving the Bush family and many others, New York bankers. No doubt about this. World War II. World War I, in which Woodrow Wilson was president, he conspired in 1913, December 21, with the Illuminati Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and all those elites to create the Federal Reserve, which was not federal. It's a private institution owned by these European foreigners into the mystery religions who were also supporting Zionism and financed the creation of the state of Israel, involving controlling politicians in World War I and World War II. It's all in these books. Tomorrow's Weapons by Brigadier General J.H. Rothschild. How many people would know this? Tomorrow's Weapons by a Rothschild. Nerve gas. Germ warfare. Morality of toxic warfare and the implications for peace. Again, garbage in, garbage out of the brain. What do these people think? They don't think like you think or I think. When you grow up thinking in the satanic world or satanic families and thinking other people are lesser than you are, which is what they teach Freemasons. The Freemasons have a word for non-Freemasons, and they call us profane. And many Jews, not all Jews, have a word for non-Jews, the utopian ones, the ones into Zionism and the Kabbalah and all this mystery religion. They call the rest of us goy and goyim, which means cattle. You got it? Get it? Cattle. These things are true. Even in the Bible, there's two categories of people. Jewish people and Gentiles. That's it. You're either Jewish or you're Gentile to these people. Now, it doesn't matter if you're Chinese, Mayan, Peruvian. If you're not Jewish, you're Gentile. Think about that. Think of where we are today. If it's that huge of a thing. And President Donald Trump recently recognized Israel, Jerusalem, as the capital of Israel. Think how powerful that is. Why is it that we accept methods of war which will burn a man to death, disable him, render him useless in mind and body? Why is it that our government, in its design for peace, refuses to disseminate information on the most human of weapons? So they actually think it's going to be humane to put people down with silent electromagnetic signals causing heart attacks or instant death, and programming people to believe in this new, decadent, progressive, do as thou wilt philosophy. An anti-Christian or any other religion, anti-Islamic, anti-teaching of the moral people from China, Buddhist or Hindu. This isn't just exclusively an attack on Christianity. And you can go see that in the Book of the Law, in my series, Freemasonry and Satanism. Aleister Crowley, the Book of the Law, series number 23. And it specifically says in there, even these other religions are the enemy. Israel and the bomb. This impeccably documented history of the first 2 decades of the Israeli nuclear program illuminates the complex domestic and international forces that shape the activity and gives the reader fascinating insight into the thinking of Israeli, French, and U.S. leaders on the uniquely sensitive subject that only a few participants were fully aware of at the time. So there's a lot of deception going on. You can get these big, thick books if you want to take the time and put the information in your head. And then you'll have conclusions based on that information. But if you don't have the information, how can you make decisions? If you don't know, how can you make decisions? If you're going to believe the pansexualism and New Age, that you are actually God, and according to David Wilcock, writing a resignation letter to Gaia, don't see any comments today. So writing a resignation letter to Gaia, accusing them of promoting the Lucifer is the good God theory, philosophy, and that God is actually the bad God. Again, it's information. It goes in our brain and out comes our thought process, our actions, our beliefs. John Hagee, Jerusalem Countdown, a warning to the world. So all this information, a lot of people have seen these programs, have listened to these people. Iran's president has said Israel must be wiped off the map of the world. How many people believe that? That's what Israel wants to do. It's part of the programming. Iran's nuclear arsenal is ready and will impact the world as never before imagined. Could this be the beginning of the end? So how many people watched John Hagee, famous evangelist, is a senior pastor at the Cornerstone Church, a place of worship and teaching he founded in San Antonio, Texas. Non-denominational evangelical church, has 18,000 members, best known nationally for his end-time writings. He has authored several fiction and non-fiction bestsellers, including What Every Man Wants in a Woman. This guy wrote a book, What Every Man Wants in a Woman. What Every Woman Wants in a Man, and The 7 Secrets. Jerusalem's war with the Crusaders. So again, what do we believe? Who's behind the scenes putting that information out there? Who owns all the newspapers and the media? A lot of people know the answer. Predominantly these Jewish elites. 7 or 8 major newspapers in the United States are owned by these people. I've gone over that. You can look it up on the internet. What is their goal? Apparently it's a new world order. As George Bush Sr. said, out of chaos and anarchy will come a new world order, a rule of law. Whose law? So with that said, I was looking at some documents. I go on Yahoo, I check my email, and as always, those press releases. So, hang on for a second. So you got Bannon. Ex-White House chief strategist Steve Bannon said President Donald Trump did fine at the Helsinki event. So you have this ex-White House chief strategist Steve Bannon says President Trump did fine at the Helsinki event. So you have some people saying having and making friends with Russia was a good thing. And I'm just completely surprised at how many people are completely opposed to that. And I was clicking a link. So to find my page here. And it said something about Donald Trump. That I clicked the link. There it is, I found it. Got so many documents here. It's now clear Trump puts himself above the country. So here you are, reading a newspaper, checking your email on the internet, and there's the press release. It's now clear Trump puts himself before the country. So it is a newspaper, it is a press release, and this is a Rick Newman column. President Trump's knifing the U.S. law enforcement agencies while in Helsinki visibly raises the possibility he might sell out his own country to appease a ruthless dictator. Wait a minute. Aren't we having war talk with China? Aren't we agreeing with Israel, the press, that demonizing Iran? Wasn't there talk recently about invading Venezuela? Now they're demonizing the Russian president. Apparently in the news, when President Donald Trump went over to Germany and Britain, he was making lots of insults, demonizing all those people. You think there might be a plan going on to bring about these kinds of thoughts in our minds, and people going, either agreeing or disagreeing, taking a side? So anyways, this was really a surprise to me, but that's all there was to the press release title right there. Nothing else. This is about football. So just this little bit. So I clicked that link to read why it's now clear Trump's put self above country. You're not going to believe when I clicked that, this is the link it took me to. Trump is making the Clintons look clean. So it's the newspaper is definitely, and the links on Yahoo News, intentional, misleading, putting a title there that you would click, that Trump puts himself above the country, and when you get to the next link, Trump is making the Clintons look clean. Former Democratic president nominee Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton at the inaugural ceremony of Donald Trump. Donald Trump won the presidency in 2016 in part because voters perceived his opponent, Hillary Clinton, to be a dishonest, self-dealing phony. I think it's a lot more than that, like Pizzagate and her hysteria, temper tantrums, and a lot of other things. So, Larry Nichols talking about he used to be their security guard or personal political manager, telling all on Alex Jones and a lot of talk shows. So if you don't know all that, garbage in, garbage out of the brain, you're not going to know what to think. But when I click this one link, it's now clear Trump puts himself above country. And then it takes me over to Trump is making the Clintons look clean. And then I read it down below. I'm not getting an honest story here. There appears to be, without a doubt, a huge political battle going on. So there was another page here. A next headline on Yahoo press releases when I was checking my emails. So this means everybody else saw this. The whole world, whoever checked Yahoo email. Ronald Reagan was a patriot. Can't read the other word, but something about what would he say about Trump? That's what it says. Ronald Reagan was a patriot. What would he say about Trump? And there's this picture. There's Ronald Reagan, American flag. There's a Russian flag. There's Donald Trump whispering into Putin's ear. You like that artwork? You think that goes into your visual senses, into your memory bank of your brain, like I read a second ago? So I was reading this, and being a knowledgeable, discerning person, I said, wait a minute. Donald Trump was a patriot? And I was a Republican back then. So I looked up a couple things because I happen to know things. But I got a picture here somewhere. I'll find it. But Richard Nixon, Donald Trump, and all these politicians acknowledge and have been known to go to the Bohemian Grove. This is like a druid version of a satanic ritual. The giant owl is Moloch. They throw a baby into the fire, and they call it a ceremony called the cremation of care. Here's a picture of Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, Bohemian Grove, where the rich and powerful go to misbehave. So the newspaper says that Ronald Reagan was a patriot. Here he is at the Bohemian Grove, where they do that ritual, throwing the baby in the fire. Apparently, they dress up naked in robes. A lot of stuff you can go look up on the Bohemian Grove. And bring in gay men for an event, homosexual, satanic, sexual, ritual things and stuff like that. So it says here in this article, Two future U.S. presidents, Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, are pictured with Harvey Hancock standing, and others at the Bohemian Grove of 1967. Every July, some of the richest and most powerful men in the world gather at the 2,700-acre campground at Mont Rio, California for 2 weeks of heavy drinking, super secret talks, druid worship. The group insists they are simply reviving the redwoods. Their purpose is to escape the frontier culture of civilized interest of common men. The people that gather at the Bohemian Grove, who have included prominent business leaders, former U.S. presidents, musicians, oil barons, are told that weaving spiders come not here, meaning business deals are to be left outside. One exception was in 1942, when a planning for the Manhattan Project took place at the Grove, leading to the creation of the atomic bomb. Yeah, you're going to believe that they leave the information, business discussion at home with all these elitists? The spokesman for the Bohemian Grove say the people that gather there share a passion for the outdoors, music, and theater, and I suppose throwing a baby into the fire. And the giant owl called Moloch. Apparently Alex Jones snuck in there and made a video. You can look it up on the internet and watch it. So there was more here, if I can find it quickly. And of course, a lot of this has been in the news lately. Maxine Waters, kind of instructing some people, she's a leading politician, to harass and confront anybody from the Republican Party leaders or whatever in Washington, D.C., wherever, telling people to get a little aggressive. Thank you, Maxine Waters. Warns her supporters, don't be baited. So they're warning their Democratic supporters to not be baited. Look at all the stuff I'm showing on my video, how a lot of people are being baited into deception. California lawmakers, Maxine Waters says she's been notified about the forthcoming protest. And here's this thing I was just telling you about on the bottom there. Reagan was a patriot. What would you call Trump? So all this stuff in the news, what I'm trying to say, is a huge battle to program people what to think. Here's another one on the Bohemian Grove. It's a fact sheet. So you got a gigantic owl here. And you go look this up. I highly suggest it. I'll read a little bit, but I just want to show the next picture. So at the Bohemian Grove, what do you think these men do? Little drunken debauchery. These are men. They dress up in women's clothes. No women are allowed at the Bohemian Grove. And they, put on these little shows for each other. And of course, they have their meetings, and they're all these elites. So again, what goes in your brain, and of course, many symbols for the owl everywhere. The Washington, D.C. street plan, even on the post, is the shape of an owl, the streets. And there's a lot of other Masonic symbolism in Washington, D.C., which is a separate territory from the rest of the 50 states, and apparently created by the Masons, the elite. Here's, again, Reagan and Nixon, couple characters. So Reagan was being talked about as being a patriot, and there's so much about him that doesn't agree with that. So I printed out 14 pages. You can go read all this. Bohemian Grove and Reagan's treason. I didn't write this. I just look up stuff. So you saw the press release today where it says, what would the patriot Reagan think about Trump or whatever? So when I started doing some research, Bohemian Grove and Reagan's treason. This weekend, Occupy protesters are targeting the Bohemian Grove in California, where well-connected rich men go on retreats several weekends each summer. The secretary of the 1980 encampment became a factor in the cover-up of possible treason by Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, writes Robert Perry. By Robert Perry. In 1972, the protectors of Ronald Reagan's legacy and George H. Bush's presidency were in a bind. They had gained the upper hand in shutting down an investigation into allegations that Reagan and Bush had gone behind President Jimmy Carter's back in 1980 to undermine his negotiations to free the 52 Americans held by the Iranians. But then one of their critical alibis collapsed. In a stranger-than-fiction moment, these protectors turn to the exclusive Bohemian Grove, the target of a new round of Occupy protests that weekend, as a location of cobbling together a replacement alibi, thus sparing the establishment the unpleasantness of a thorough investigation into what had happened by treason by the widely admired Reagan and Bush Sr. So apparently they didn't want the Carter administration to successfully have the hostages freed prior to a coming election, because then Carter would look good and probably win the election. So apparently they contacted some higher-ups in Iran, made some deals probably, and said, keep the prisoners until after the election. So this stuff is going on and on and on, portraying Bush as the a good person who has done bad things, and Reagan. And then when President Donald Trump wins the presidency, continuing to barrage him with all kinds of threats and accusations. And I think a lot of it is all, the world's the stage, is all propaganda for we the people, to cause us to not have a correct, intelligent, mental perception of what's going on in the world. You've seen the books here. There is this conspiracy that's not a conspiracy anymore. They admit it. The words you can look up: New World Order, New Age, Globalism. Who hasn't said it? Who hasn't said it's coming? And the preparations. Jade Helm 15 in 2015. Artificial intelligence, computerized systems going online. Speaking of that, I'm going to try to play a little clip here. It's me discovering an advertisement in these documents here, if I can probably find it and show it to you. For the Jewish Christian Coalition, and trying to get people to donate money. And so I said, I got to talk about this in my video, and I went to print it out. So let me see if I can do this. I'm getting more proficient at using this live streaming software. But let me see if I can do this. So first I click Browser. Well, it worked earlier when I tried it. All right, one more try. I had to videotape what I want to show because, here we go. July 19th, 2018. More suspicious problems with my computer. Rick Miracle reporting. We are unable to return you to ifcj.org. Christian Jewish organization. Check this out. So it took me away from this page on purpose. This happens when I do my research and I see things that don't make sense. The International Fellowship of Christian and Jews. God's people. Bless them. Okay, so let's print this out. It continues to do that. And then, try it again. Print. It continues to crash the software. Well, I tried, but apparently I'm not doing it correctly today. I tried. Still getting used to this software. Apologize for that. So anyways, I did try to go on to the kind of fun trying to figure this software out. I may have to get some other software to do live streaming. This particular program doesn't seem to be doing as much as I like. But anyways, the bottom line is again, when I try to download or print out or go to certain websites in my research, I get attacked. My computer shuts down. And when I went to that particular website about the Jewish Christian Coalition, and it said to donate money to help Israel, which was under attack, and knowing what I know about everything, I said, I need to print this out and talk about it, but I couldn't print it out, and I couldn't select all and copy and paste. So finally I said, well, I can beat them at their own game, and I took out my camera, and I videotaped my repeated attempts to go to this website. And during the course of my research, it's happening quite often. I can tell, I believe, and I don't believe it's paranoia, but there are intelligence in the computer world that are monitoring what we do and making life a little difficult so that people will not pay attention. They want people to believe certain things. So again, as I talked about in the beginning of this video, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what to believe, you don't have all the straight facts, you don't see all these books, if you follow all the New Age books, a lot of the media propaganda on the TV, in the movies, in magazines, taught in the school system, The people on the streets, a lot of places you go, look like zombies. I think calling themselves weird, a lot of people believe is cool. Looking at my comments here. And thank you for bearing with me on my efforts to try to be able to show live clips on my live streaming thing. You got to learn somehow. And I was testing it earlier today, and I thought I had it working. So anyways, after reading the Dianetics, which I'm continuing to read, and doing research on the internet, and the research was simply just checking my email and seeing the current press releases and seeing the distortion of the truth and trying to say this doctoring up that Reagan was a patriot and comparing him to President Donald Trump. It's a deception. Ronald Reagan was one of the insiders with Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was once tape recorded as saying in an argument with somebody, "Can't we just nuke someone?" So there's so much craziness with these people. And Hugo says, Hagee rot in Hades. And that's what I'm saying. This is part of that is the same thing as President Donald Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. So what are we supposed to believe? The 1,000 books in my office? Half of them probably are part of the New Age deception. The Anunnaki are coming. A pole shift is about to happen. So 500 of the books. The other half, they're trying to tell us, like this one here with Rothschilds, tomorrow's weapons. Is he talking about all these electromagnetic artificial intelligence systems, declaring that they're more humane than bombs or bullets? What kind of world is coming? So again, thank you for watching my live streaming event. It's just a conversation, so we can have something to process and decide what we all think. That's what I'm trying to do, is at least get people to wake up to the fact, that these books are out there. And the elites financed World War II. Germany was broke, and Hitler promised the elites he would pay them back the money that they wanted if he was to become the leader. And he did their bidding. And part of the goal is to get into the Palestine, the Middle East, and create the state of Israel. They tried that during World War I, but even with the Balfour Agreement with Britain, after the Jews turned traitor in Germany and sided with Britain, they were for Germany initially. But Germany wouldn't go against Turkey and topple the Ottoman Empire that controlled the Middle East. So they had to switch to the Britons, and they said they had put President Woodrow Wilson in the presidency seat in the United States, and they had created the Federal Reserve. 6 months later, they started World War I, and President Woodrow Wilson was involved in helping to take over the USA money supply. When for the previous 50 years, U.S. presidents and leaders fought them, these outside controllers, and several presidents were poisoned, a couple of them assassinated. But they finally got the control of the money supply. And when you control somebody's checkbook, just think about it. Will you give me your checkbook so I can go buy all the things I want? Of course you wouldn't. But that's what they do when they control our money supply. And they've been using it ever since 1913, 2013, 2018 now, for 105 years, bringing us world wars, 9/11, and so much more, sucking trillions out of this country, probably gazillions if there's such a word. Hugo says, thanks, Rick. Bye till tomorrow. I hope if there is one. Well, remember, Hugo, we are spiritual beings. The physical reality is a temporary visit. We're born and we die. It's the spiritual world that to me is more important. Even in the Bible it says, don't let these things bother you. You can even, I'm paraphrasing, you can even watch it with amusement as you watch it all unplay like it's been prophesied to unplay. It's all prophesied to occur, so I suppose it has to happen. And then the evil entities will go where they go to after they die, and good people will go where they go to. And who else was talking like that the other day? Mike Adams of Natural News. He said he believes that this portion of the galaxy, universe, is set aside for whatever reason. We people are here for some reason, and you get to make free choices. And so when you do die, you have to account for those choices. So is it some kind of prison planet like some people say on the internet? Who knows? But I say awareness and education is key. Knowledge is king. And of course they're using, the powers that want to bring us a global world order are using deception, and they're installing all kinds of technological weaponized systems to control us. They're in there messing with our computers, as I've seen recently more and more as I'm doing research only on certain topics, usually involving these controllers or Zionism or Israel and the deception and propaganda. My system shuts down. And I realize they have that control. Hugo says I don't trust Mike Adams. That's hard to know who to trust. But I listen to a lot of these people and make up my own mind. I got the books, I continue reading, I continue seeing and thinking. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.